Wine was trickling down my face when I heard Bridget, my wife's sister, erupt with a malicious laugh. It wasn't an awkward or uncertain laugh. It was a cynical, deeply held one born from years of pent-up disdain. "Thanks, Dad," she sneered. "Maybe that'll make him show some respect. Disgusting swine." That was Harlan Voss, my father-in-law, who had never once acknowledged me as anything more than an unsolved problem during our 4 years of marriage to his daughter. Alois, my wife, remained still beside me, not reaching for my hand, not addressing him, not standing up. Instead, she stared at her plate as if the situation might dissipate if given enough time. 11 others occupied the table during New Year's Eve dinner at the Voss family estate in Highland Park, Dallas. The event featured white tablecloths, catered cuisine, and a residence priced beyond many individuals' two-decade earnings. Among them sat Conrad Ellison, who donned a $600 shirt stained with Chateau Margaux while his spouse's relatives debated whether to chuckle along. The majority did. Prior to sharing the subsequent events, I must clarify something. I am not a man prone to outbursts in public settings. As a corporate attorney, I have maintained composure even opposite adversaries intent on undermining companies I had cultivated ties with over years, never once raising my voice. Therefore, when I expressed that I gripped the chair forcefully, understand it wasn't a loss of control, but rather an expression of intense emotion. That night, I purposefully determined what taking control would entail. Standing tall, I glanced at Harlan Voss before striding towards the hallway, withdrawing my phone to dial a number. The adversaries underestimated their opponent. They believed they were disgracing a man with everything to forfeit. Unbeknownst to them, the call I was about to place would set in motion an unraveling of intricate plans Harlan Voss had meticulously orchestrated over 15 years. Plans hinging entirely on one factor: silence. Me. Before I delve into what transpired at that table and what followed, I wish to appeal to you. Subscribe to this channel if you're new here. Click the like button. Comment below. Each comment is read thoroughly. The individuals who share these narratives and those who listen are interconnected in a common cause. A testament to the idea that dignity cannot be stripped, it can only be surrendered. They may attempt, but they will never succeed in taking it from you. For the record, some individuals may strive throughout their lifetimes, but change doesn't occur in that manner. Allow me to share a story about Harlan Voss. My name is Conrad Ellison, aged 46. Born and raised in Fort Worth, I was brought up by a solitary mother who held multiple jobs for the majority of my childhood without ever uttering a complaint. She embodied the spirit of a woman who prepared a lunch and a list of ambitions every morning, treating both with equal gravity. I self-funded my undergraduate studies at UT Austin, attended law school at SMU in Dallas, Dedman, and spent the ensuing 2 decades constructing a practice in corporate and family business law that garnered considerable respect within North Texas. My clientele primarily consists of privately held family businesses, most of which are multi-generational, and find themselves grappling with the very sort of internal power struggles and succession dilemmas that drive good people to act in ways that are less than admirable. I've witnessed it all, thought I had seen it all until 7 years ago at an uptown Dallas charity gala in the Ritz-Carpenters, I encountered Alois Voss. She was a force, debating fervently with a waiter over the lack of local catering services. Wearing a deep green gown, she spoke her mind without apologies. We conversed for 3 hours. I was smitten. Unbeknownst to me at the time, I was captivated by a woman from an elite Dallas family, whose wealth and influence were subtly woven into the city's infrastructure: buildings, foundations, and endowments. Harlan Voss, her patriarch, constructed a substantial commercial real estate empire over 3 decades, a man who meticulously calculates every cost and leverages each relationship to his advantage. He serves on 3 charitable boards, attends the appropriate church, plays golf with suitable companions, and has never in his life been refused by someone he deemed inferior. From the moment Alois introduced me to our home, I was seen as a challenge. Not because I wasn't successful or difficult, my practice was thriving even then. It wasn't due to disrespect either. I was always courteous to him. The issue was more straightforward and unattractive than any of that. The issue was that I didn't originate from his sphere, owed nothing to it, and required nothing from it. And for a man who depends on power dynamics, a son-in-law he can't use to his advantage is a son-in-law he finds intimidating. He initially masked it with politeness, but that was only an act. Strong grips during our handshakes, feigned interest in my professional journey, occasional remarks about the astounding feat of creating something from nothing, all said as if praising a street dog for learning a trick. Alois didn't catch it. She was too entrenched, having been immersed in that specific atmosphere. But I picked up on it each time. Then came Bridget. At 38 years old, she had never maintained employment for over a year. She holds a degree she seldom discusses and has a past husband who is taboo in the family conversations. Her skill at navigating the Voss family's social intricacies is quite remarkable, though disturbingly so. Bridget was well acquainted with the seating arrangements within the family before my arrival, and she made it her mission to ensure I comprehended my standing. The comments were always subtle, nearly imperceptible if you weren't attentive. A mention of a neighborhood I grew up in, delivered subtly with a small smirk. Inquired about my mother's current location, a question posed gently despite her passing away 3 years prior. A narrative shared during a family meal about an individual who had climbed the ladder of difficulty, which always subtly emphasized the significance of understanding one's origins. Harlan never contested it. He merely smiled and diverted the conversation, a silent approval. Alois detested it. She expressed her disdain to me. We likely repeated this same disagreement about 30 times over our 4-year marriage. She would challenge her father, things would momentarily improve for a few weeks, only to resurface, slightly more intense each time. The boundary was gradually pushed further, and the resolution periods grew shorter. I persistently believed, as my inherent nature was optimistic towards humanity, that there existed a resolution for this situation, that the Voss family wasn't beyond redemption. I thought that with time, patience, and the gradual demonstration of my worthiness could lead to a favorable outcome. However, I was proven wrong. It was on New Year's Eve in Highland Park where I finally comprehended the extent of my error. The dinner commenced as those dinners typically did, with a calculated display of normality. The Voss family's estate on Beverly Drive, a 1920s Tudor revival, had been twice renovated by Harlan and his wife Sandra, and maintained with such precision that it seemed more like a stage set than a home. The dining room could comfortably seat 16. That night there were 13 of us. Harlan and Sandra, Alois and myself, Bridget and her present partner, whose name frequently slipped my mind due to his scarcity of speech, Alois's brother Garrett and his spouse Naomi, 2 sets of family acquaintances, the Holloways and the Parishes, and Harlan's elder mother, Dolers at 91 who seldom spoke but observed diligently. The meal was arranged by a Preston Hollow restaurant with a private event fee that would leave many astonished. The wine, however, was all Harlan's doing. He took immense pride in his cellar, enjoyed sharing the vintage before anyone partook, and relished the power in deciding what everyone consumed. Prior to this dinner, I had been cautious. Alois and I had discussed it on our drive over. She, seated as a passenger, urged me to be patient considering her father was experiencing tension with a Fort Worth business deal that had become intricate, requesting I be forgiving. I assured her I am always accommodating. She gave a knowing glance, implying she understood the price of that statement and appreciated me bearing it. The initial hour passed smoothly. The food was delightful. Garrett and I engaged in an authentic discussion regarding his construction contract dispute. He valued the legal perspective, found solace in our dialogue. Sandra maintained her usual distant charm. Even Bridget seemed well-behaved, which should have warned me of impending events, as Bridget's politeness is never idle but always prelude. As expected at Voss family gatherings, the topic shifted to business. Harlan's venture in Fort Worth was under discussion, a mixed-use development he was collaborating on near West 7th Street. He elaborated on the financial setup, partnership terms, and timeline. I paid attention, then he made a factually incorrect statement. I emphasized this detail as it influences the sequence of events that followed. You presented an agreement between 2 of your LLCs as if a specific clause was ironclad, although I, with my professional knowledge, knew that this clause had been contested in Texas courts and declared unenforceable in 2 instances within the past 18 months. This oversight could potentially result in significant financial losses for you and your associates should the agreement encounter issues. I subtly pointed out that there were recent Texas legal precedents complicating that specific provision, but received a response suggesting that you have a comprehensive understanding of contractual matters. Conrad, you said, putting down your fork, I've been structuring deals in this city even before you got your law license. My response was affirmative. Of course, I understand your confidence regarding your own contracts. I'm merely bringing it up for consideration, hinting at the similarity to the Meridian Partners case in Harris County from last spring. I didn't seek legal counsel. No, you didn't, I replied, offering an apology. I raised my glass, believing the discussion was finished. However, it wasn't over. You understand, Harlan said, his tone altered, echoing a prelude to a storm. Alois's grandfather used to say that a person's character could be gauged by knowing when to speak and when to remain silent. This was one of the most valuable lessons he imparted. The table fell silent. Father, Alois murmured, her voice cautious. I'm merely making an observation, Harlan replied calmly. It's a valid observation, Bridget concurred, flashing me a smile that carried an underlying threat. I fixed my gaze on Harlan, unflinching. Dad, Alois repeated, and I remained silent. For 2 decades, I was a lawyer, understanding the power of restraint. Yet it was then he picked up his glass of wine, advanced towards me, and hurled it at me. Not a spill, not a drop missed. He raised it, glared at me, and launched it. The wine struck my face and my attire, trickling down my neck. It was chilling. An eerie hush fell over the room. Then Bridget laughed, that boisterous, joyful, revolting laugh, and uttered words I'll forever remember. Thanks, Dad. Perhaps that'll teach him some manners. Despicable swine. Dolores, Harlan's elderly mother, deliberately placed her fork on the table and scrutinized her son with an expression I hadn't known at the time. Now I do. It was embarrassment. She was ashamed of her son. My spouse remained motionless. For precisely 3 seconds I sat there, feeling the wine dribble, sensing the judgment of the 11 people seated at that table. Afterwards I rose, placed my napkin on the table, politely excused myself, and departed towards the hallway. The Voss Mansion's hallway stretches, boasting its original oak flooring that squeaks in specific spots near the coat closet, a detail familiar from my tread over 40 occasions during a span of 4 years. I was close to the window with a view of the side garden as I made the call, addressing Preston Ware, a partner at a downtown Dallas firm managing commercial real estate litigation, among other tasks. We've shared professional connections for 16 years, consulting on mutual cases and exchanging clients. Earlier this year, 8 months back, he approached me concerning a contract dispute with a Highland Park commercial developer whose LLC structure showed peculiarities. I declined the case then due to a conflict, yet I had examined enough documents to grasp their contents. "Hello, Preston," I began upon answering. 11:45 p.m. on New Year's night, he took my call. "I have something important to discuss with you. Has the Voss predicament remained unsettled?" There was a moment of silence. "Preston, why are you contacting me about this on New Year's Eve?" His response was prompt. "Because I've been confronted by Harlan Voss with Chateau Margaux in front of 13 witnesses, and I need to confirm if my suspicions regarding his partnership structure are known by his present partners." Another period of silence followed. "Indeed," he replied. "You're absolutely serious." "Without a doubt," was my response. "Are you still restrained from participating?" Images of Alois at the table, gazing down at her plate, crossed my mind. "No," I declared. "I don't think so." Preston fell silent for a moment. Then he spoke up. "Call me tomorrow at 9 in the morning. You'll find the documents quite intriguing." For another minute, I stood by the window, gazing out at the garden that Harlan Voss pays a landscape company $3,000 monthly to tend. And I made my choice. The decision wasn't impulsive or vengeful. It was calculated and businesslike, defining my approach for what lay ahead. I returned to the dining room where the table remained undisturbed. Bridget was pouring more wine. Harlan chatted with the Holloways about trivial matters, feigning normality. Sandra stared at the tablecloth. Garrett fixed his gaze on me. I settled back next to Alois. She murmured, "Conrad, I'm deeply sorry." I covered her hand momentarily. "I understand," I replied. "We'll discuss it at home." I completed dinner, exchanged pleasantries, shook hands, and wished the Holloways and Parishes a happy new year. I thanked Sandra for an enjoyable evening since she was not responsible for her husband's actions, and she seemed on the verge of tears. I remained silent towards Harlan and Bridget. During our 12-minute drive back to our Lakewood residence, Alois sobbed loudly throughout, not silently but fully. 4 years of restraint, finally breaking with suppressed sobs, driving silently, allowing her to cry until we reached our driveway before speaking. "Alois, there are things you need to comprehend," I said. "I've tolerated your family for 4 long years, enduring more than I should, letting go of what shouldn't be let go, all because I loved you and held out hope the situation would improve. Tonight shattered that hope." not just due to the wine thrown at me, but the underlying implications that nobody there intervened. She admitted, "I should have spoken up." "Indeed," I agreed. We stayed silent in the driveway for quite some time before she asked, "What's your plan now?" To which I responded, "Work." Upon calling Preston Ware at 9 on New Year's Day the following morning, here's what I discovered. Over the past 6 years, Harlan Voss set up a sequence of commercial real estate ventures in the Dallas-Fort Worth region, utilizing a network of LLCs that appeared as standard development groups on the surface. The external investors who funded these enterprises with their money, alongside Harlan, were a diverse group spanning old and new market entrants, all relying on the Voss name's credibility. However, they were unaware that the management fee structure established by Harlan in these partnerships deviated from what was stated in the operating agreement. Investigations initiated due to a contract dispute leading to a broader examination revealed this discrepancy. Hidden within amendment schedules and side letters were terms that diverted a share of the management fees into an entity entirely controlled by Harlan. For years, partners unwittingly covered his personal expenses, a significant issue that could escalate to breach of fiduciary duty in Texas. This situation, if proven, could lead to more severe consequences. Preston's client was seeking full disclosure of the arrangement details, but progress was slow due to Harlan's competent lawyers and complex document structure. However, Preston had gathered enough evidence, and I, having analyzed several LLC operating agreements 8 months prior when Preston first presented the case, could provide crucial insights. I decided to join forces as co-counsel. During the subsequent 6 weeks, here's a quick summary of the events, with the focus on their implications rather than the legal complexities. 1. Preston managed to acquire some documents that clearly showed the extent of the financial arrangement. 2. When presented with this evidence, Harlan and his lawyers attempted to negotiate a settlement, but Preston's client was unsatisfied with the terms offered. 3. The case proceeded to mediation, but it ended in a stalemate when Harlan refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing or agree to significant financial compensation. 4. Preston then decided to file a lawsuit against Harlan and his partners for breach of fiduciary duty and fraudulent misrepresentation. The case is now moving forward in court, with discovery ongoing. Working in conjunction, Preston and I successfully linked documents provided by his client with 2 previous Voss partners who had identified inconsistencies in their distributions and were puzzled as to why. Upon comprehending the situation, these 2 partners consulted separate legal representation and aligned themselves with the lawsuit. By the end of January, Harlan Voss found himself embroiled in a civil lawsuit from 4 former and current business associates, a formal grievance to the Texas Real Estate Commission, and the initiation of an investigation into securities fraud, since some of the investment structures had mechanisms that invoked federal supervision. The Fort Worth deal he had mentioned at the New Year's dinner, the one I attempted to discreetly caution him about, completely disintegrated when his primary financing partner withdrew following the revelation of legal action. This single deal encompassed an 18-month development plan and substantial projected profits. In the second week of February, his lawyer contacted me regarding a potential agreement that would keep certain issues private. I made it clear that I couldn't decide on this matter for my clients, as stated. Additionally, I mentioned that the decision on confidentiality versus public resolution ultimately rested with those harmed, and at the time, they had no compelling reason to maintain secrecy. It's important to mention Alois because the story isn't solely about Harlan. The weeks following New Year's Eve were the most challenging period in our marriage, not due to wine, Bridget's laughter, or professional matters, but because of the unspoken tension at the dinner table. We both understood its implications, and neither wanted to be the first to voice it. Alois cared deeply for her father. Despite who he was and his actions, she had grown up in that household, dined at that table, and bore that surname. Learning that the man who constructed something tangible had secretly deceived those near him for years was a reality she needed to grapple with in her own way, which I couldn't assist her with. We had numerous discussions that February, which I will never reveal to anyone because they are private between us. What I can disclose is that Alois is braver than she acknowledges and stronger than her family ever recognized, and the instant she ceased defending an illusion of her father was the moment I witnessed her becoming more authentic than I had ever seen her be. She called Harlan in February, I was elsewhere at the time. I didn't eavesdrop. When she emerged, her eyes were red, but her posture was straight. She said, "He asked if I knew what you were doing. He asked me to make you stop." She informed him that only he could have prevented the current situation 4 years ago, when he decided my husband didn't deserve basic human respect. After a pause, she continued by stating that his actions towards his partners were a matter for him, God, and the Texas court system. However, his actions against her were personal, and it would take a significant amount of time before she was ready to discuss it. I asked if she was all right, to which she replied, "Ask me again in a year." Later in January, Bridget contacted me. It's unclear what she thought might happen, perhaps triumph or an assessment of the severity. She said, "I hope you realize that whatever you're doing is tearing apart this family." I responded, "Bridget, the actions causing this family rift happened before New Year's Eve. I'm just one of several lawyers dealing with a civil case initiated by your father's former business partners." She stated, "You've often perceived yourself superior to us." To which I responded, "Never that, but I've always believed I deserved basic human respect at the dinner table, two distinct concepts." She ended the call. The legal matter was resolved in March, and due to a confidentiality clause, I can't disclose the details. However, I am bound by my professional commitments, regardless of personal feelings. As for what I can reveal, Harland Voss's participation in active real estate partnerships within the Dallas-Fort Worth region has significantly altered. The Voss Family Foundation, formerly chaired by Sandra for 12 years and held dear, has had to reconsider its funding streams and reduce numerous programs. Moreover, the Highland Park property is now on the market for sale. In February, a handwritten letter from Harland's 91-year-old mother, Dolers, arrived at my Commerce Street office in downtown Dallas. The four-sentence note revealed she had witnessed her son transform into an unfamiliar man over the past decade. She apologized for an incident at her grandson's table and acknowledged knowing my mother's associates. She mentioned a mutual church connection from Fort Worth, which was unknown to me, and expressed belief in my integrity. I still have that letter tucked away in my desk's less frequently used drawer. In sharing this with you, I want to convey a message I always strive to impart to those facing seemingly insurmountable situations, where power appears exclusively held by the other party. I urge you to remember that there is always hope and potential for change, even when it feels like power lies elsewhere. Harland Voss's flung wine at my face constituted his greatest folly, not due to the embarrassment it caused me, though it did so before spectators whose judgments I held in minimal regard, but because of the widespread nature of gossip. This wasn't because it exposed who he was. I was already aware of his character as it liberated me. For 4 years, I had been tactfully and cautiously maneuvering within the Voss family, much like a guardian shielding someone dear from the heavy impact of their kin's true nature. I made decisions aimed at preservation, Aloyse's tranquility, her connections, and the delicate illusion that things could improve if only I remained patient, cautious, and calculated about when to speak and when to remain silent. The wine served as my liberation from this predicament. Not to become angry, anger isn't a tactic, but rather to be truthful and transparent with myself regarding reality, and to manage the truth just as I manage all else, efficiently, systematically, and with a thorough understanding of the actual facts. Harland Voss spent 15 years constructing a reputation on exploitation. He exploited connections, his reputation, and manipulated Highland Park's social structure for his benefit. What he failed to grasp is that exploitation only succeeds when the other party remains unaware of their power. I knew my power. I had merely chosen not to utilize it thus far. It's been 8 months since New Year's Eve. Aloyse and I dined last weekend at a Bishop Arts restaurant we've frequented since before our marriage. She opted for the halibut, while I chose the steak. We conversed for 3 hours on various topics, omitting discussions about her family, which is a form of advancement in itself. A year ago, this quietness would have been filled with unsaid words. Now it's simply a Tuesday. She's in therapy and will openly discuss it. She's not one to avoid necessary actions. She's been tackling the challenging task of defining her future relationship with her parents, a journey I can't embark on for her nor try to guide. That's her path. Her brother Garrett contacted me last month. He expressed his regret for not speaking up at dinner. I acknowledged his apology sincerely. He said, "I realized you were the only one in that room who truly understood what you were doing. I'm not sure that was a compliment to either of us." He chuckled, which seemed meaningful. My practice is thriving. In every instance, I thrive due to authentic work, genuine clients, and tangible problems to solve, none of which are contingent on the house I occupy during New Year's Eve. My late mother, who spent 30 years in a humble Fort Worth residence before passing 3 years ago, used to tell me, Conrad, people will reveal their true selves. Your role is to trust them from the start. She shared this wisdom with me when I was about 12, and even at age 46, I'm still striving to embody it. I chose to believe Harlan Voss, but delayed taking action on that belief. If you find yourself in a predicament where someone, a family member, superior, or anyone wielding social power over something significant to you devalues you, let me address you directly. The embarrassment they inflict is not an evaluation of your worth. It reflects their fear. Harlan Voss hurled wine at my face because I was the one he couldn't dominate in that room. Every caustic remark, every slight, every subtle display of dominance, it was all a desperate attempt by a man to conceal his fear of being irrelevant. One doesn't need a law degree to act with tact and resilience. One doesn't require an immaculate wardrobe to call for help when situations become precarious. What one truly needs is discernment about reality and the courage to uphold it, disregarding other people's perceptions of oneself. That night at the Highland Park dinner table served to define me, yet I was already aware of my identity. The part of Conrad's tale that struck me most forcefully wasn't the wine but the silence, the instant when everyone at that table made a decision, and many chose poorly. I often ponder this, how those who never cause trouble can sometimes share equal responsibility with those who do. Conrad didn't lose his cool, he didn't plead for recognition, he merely grew incredibly precise. Has that clarity transformed everything for you? Then, I ask, is there a person in your life who has been receiving patience when they truly need consequences instead? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I always read each one carefully. If tales like this resonate with you, subscribe, we're only beginning.